Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I am back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today, such an exciting day, the Spooktacular release dropped last night, and so this is my first video with it. I'm using a bunch of new products, which I'm super excited about. I know Halloween's not everybody's bag, but stick around, I'm going to teach you something that you can use with other things. So I'm using the Perfect Potions, which I totally love, and then I am using the Halloween potion labels, Happy Halloween, and Hocus Pocus, which is the sentiment set. So we're going to talk about a couple of different things here. First things first, I am doing my background in Copic marker, which is not something that I normally do. And I tell you guys all the time I do. I tell you not to compare yourself to other people. I tell you that we were all on different art journeys. I tell you that it is important not to let other people steal your joy, to not let comparison be the thief of joy. And so I want to tell you a story because you guys know that I believe in being upfront and honest. And so when I fail to give myself the same grace that I am telling you need to give yourself, I feel like it's important to be transparent and to share those. So you guys know now that I'm doing this more full-time, that I am doing more blog hops and working with more companies and doing things like that. And so one of the blog hops that I signed up to be on, I did a scene card. And now we haven't had the discussion about design teams, but we will soon. But one of the things is with a blog hop, you don't typically know who the other participants are until the blog hop list comes out, which is usually about 24, sometimes less than 24 to 48 hours, before the list before the hop goes live. So at that point, you've already made what you've made, you're just in it to win it. You just living your best life, doing the best you can. And so this particular blog hop, I made a scene card. I shared it. I was relatively happy with the way that my scene looked, I think. And then I saw the hop list. And if you are not familiar with Amy Young, she is amazing. Total fangirl moment here. She is a fantastic Copic colorist. She does all her own background scenes. And I think she might even do her own stamps. I'm not positive. But anyway, she's amazing. Fantastic. Just nothing but love for her talent. She's so talented. And I saw that she was on the hop. And so I was talking to my friend Dawn, and I was like, girl, I did a scene card on a blog hop with Amy Young. What am I even doing with my life? Side note, back to the card. So I had to stop there and refill my C3 marker. It was getting pretty dry, in case you didn't notice. So I'm just kind of recoloring back over those same bricks or cinder blocks that I previously drew. And I did draw them wonky and imperfect intentionally because I have a feeling in a little dark, dingy dungeon, they wouldn't be perfect. They'd be a little chipped and broken and kind of funky looking. So anyway, and so Dawn, being the friend that she is, she rallies, and she's like, I don't even know who she is. So she looks her up and she was like, you could totally do this. You could do this. You could do this. And I was like, nah, girl, I can't do it. I cannot do it. She do all kinds of things I cannot do. And she was like, no, you totally can do this. You're just you're psyching yourself out. So I was like, okay. Maybe Dawn's right. Maybe I can do this. I don't typically even try to do this. So maybe let's give it a whirl and see if we can do this. And turns out I can. Turns out I can. This scene is much more simplified, but it was definitely the look that I was going for, and I was happy with the results that I did. What I also learned is there's a reason why I don't do them. It's an immense amount of work. An enormous amount of work to draw in and color your own background scene. Does that mean that it's not worth it? Nope. Sometimes it is. And in this case, I have no regrets. This card took me longer than most of my other cards because I did choose to draw in my own background, and I'm fine with it. I think that at the end of the day, I was super happy with my card, and that's what it's about. But I just thought that I would share with you how even I sometimes get sucked into the I'm not as good as XYZ. And it kept me from even, like, I had already decided that I wasn't even worth me trying. It wasn't even worth me sharing my card in this blog hop because hers was going to be so otherworldly and mine was just going to be ordinary and mundane. Mine was going to be a muggle in the Harry Potter world. Like, it was not, but that wasn't true. Do you know what I'm saying? That was not true. Let's talk about that card real quick here. So originally I went in and I was doing the soft brush just because I wanted to see how that kind of reacted, and it just wasn't putting down enough pigment for me. It did give me a really, really nice soft blend on the outside of my little darker pigment here, which I appreciate. But in order to get it as dark as I wanted, I did switch back to my Distress ink and my super seasoned ink applicator. So once that is done, I'm going to set it aside to dry, and then I'm going to stamp my little potion bottles. Aren't these darling? I think they're so cute. I'm going to stamp this in Intense Black ink from Honeybee Stamps because I am going to be coloring with Copic markers. So I'm going to stamp those down. I stamped 5 in total, and then there's also a boo-boo here where I cannot do what I wanted to correctly. So we'll talk about that too. But anyway, the whole point of that story and getting out in front of it was simply to share with you that it happens to the best of us, that we can get sucked into comparing ourselves with others, and then it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy where you already believe that you can't do it, or it won't be good enough, or it won't be what you thought it would be, that you don't even try. And so I would encourage you to, I tell Nathan, this is what I tell him when he thinks bad thoughts: picture a big red stop sign. And then after that big red stop sign, you use that as like a palate cleanser, like a brain cleanser. Picture your big red stop sign, and then right after that, think good thoughts. So in this case, it would be like, I can do this background. I can accomplish the thing that I'm looking to do on my card. I can do this technique, whatever it is. Fill it with good stuff, not the negative. I know it's hard. Like I said, even I get sidetracked by it, by comparing myself to other people. And then also, I would encourage you to check out Amy Young. She is really amazing. So now let's talk about the coloring. That's what a lot of coloring. It's a longer video. So we're gonna fangirl somebody else here too. He is Italian. I will butcher the pronunciation of his name. I'm pretty sure his name is Alberto. But if you have not seen him, I will link. I think he's only on Instagram. I don't even think he has a blog. But his coloring is also fantastic. Now, he doesn't really do the scenes or anything, and he is designing his own stamps. I know that for sure. But his coloring is fantastic, and it's super high contrast and beautiful and bright and just sucks you right in and makes you love it. And a lot of times he draws his own kind of add-ons to stamps. And one of the ones that he had done quite some time ago was like a little jar, a bottle jar. And I really loved his drawing. I think it was beautiful. And so it kind of, when these came out, that's what I pictured in my head. And so I wanted to show you a couple of different ways that you can Copic color a container so that it looks full. So first thing first, I'm going in with my gray markers and I'm adding shading just around the outside of the bottle because you don't want it to be completely flat. You want there to be some shape and some dimension to the bottle. Now, typically I do this with my blues. I chose to do it with grays this time so that it would be very neutral. Don't worry, I'm going to bring blue back in at the last minute because he's my boyfriend and I love him. But I did want to show you what it would look like with just some neutrals. And then you could also do this even as like colored glass where you didn't use the gray on the outside, you used a different color. Like, you know, they have the teal or the purple tinted glass. You could use those as well, and that would be, you know, really pretty and not fill them with anything. Alternatively, these also have dies that you can use them as shakers, that you can cut out the inside and then use the bottles as shakers, which I love. So the first way we're going to fill this bottle is we are going to fill this entire bottle in, but we want the top portion to be rounded, almost like the side of an oval. And then we're going to complete the other side of that oval with our next darkest cover, leaving a thin oval of our lightest color in the back, because the light would hit it as if it was on top, like the surface. And so that is going to give us this 3D look of having liquid inside, that isn't necessarily true because it's a flat image, but we're helping it to look 3D by making it look full. So you're going to add, the majority of your shading to the front, and to like the sides will be a little bit darker. You have to have some dark depth in there so that you create that dimension. I am going to go back into that little tiny oval and add my mid-tone to it, just around like the back portion, so that's the darkest, and then fill it in with my lightest again. This again is just going to kind of bulk up that dimension. And then I was happy with the way that one looked. This one is going to go awry. Terribly, terribly awry. So my original game plan was that I wanted it to look as if like the water was moving, so there would like be a little swoop in the background, but I had never even attempted this before. I'm trying to teach it to you. I'd never attempted it before. But I think that it's super important to share our mistakes, and so that is why I'm sharing this with you. I am eventually going to speed it up just a little bit. So here is where I went wrong. Let me explain that first, so that way if you're trying this at home, you can avoid my mistakes and hopefully be a lot more successful. I did eventually get this down. It just wasn't with this one. So the first mistake is, along the top line, I did not leave a highlight. It is dark all the way through the top line. And then through the bottom, I added shading right in the middle of my bottle. So I was trying to kind of make that left-hand side, that highlight pop. And in doing that, it would have worked fine if I wanted the whole thing to be dark, but I didn't. And so in adding that dark right there, it forced me to make the entire thing dark. I added too much darkness to the background and too much darkness to the front. So there was no flow. It didn't look like they were even connected. It just looked like there was like this big light colored hole in the middle of my potion? I guess we're calling it a potion. So I'm going to fix it. That's what's going to happen. It's not going to be the way that I intended it to originally, but I did end up getting this done, and you'll see that in the next bottle. So how do I fix that? I'm going to go in with my colorless blender. There's some risks here. I'm going to be honest with you. You risk bleeding out that marker into the rest of your image and just completely ruining it. You have to push the pigment around. A colorless blender does not erase the pigment. Okay? It will lighten it. It will not erase it. What it's doing is it's pushing the pigment to other areas. Second thing, don't overwork it. Let it dry. Here, I didn't want to take the time to let it dry, so I dried it with my heat tool, and then I went back in. My main goal here is I want to keep the lightness on the outside of the bottle so that I can maintain some sort of a highlight. And so I'm going to take my colorless blender around there and just be happy that it's not completely black, to be honest. So now, instead of doing the swoop, my intention is to do it at more of an angle. So I'm going to go in. This is my second darkest color that I'm adding the shading with. And then I'm going to go back in with the darkest. I'm going to put that in around the front portion where the 3D part is going to be happening. I'm going to put a line underneath that and leave that kind of angled rectangle a little bit lighter. To lighten that further, I am going to go in with my VO1 and just kind of work it back and forth until I'm happy with how light it is. Again, be gentle. You don't want to completely blow out that line. And then I did have a little bit of bleeding, so I kind of smoothed out that back portion of it with my VO4, which is my second color. And then, even though it's not as light as I wanted it to be, I'm calling it done. Here now that I've tried it one time, I've seen what my errors are. I'm going to do it this time. I'm gonna get my swoop in on this bottle instead. So before, I had just originally intended on showing you 3 ways to do it, but we ended up with 4 because of my boo-boo. And that's okay. It's a teaching moment. So now here with this one, I've learned I have to leave that highlight line. I have to leave a light line across the top. So I'm adding shading on the outsides of this. I'm not adding any shading in the middle like I did with the other one. Not adding any shading in the middle at all. I'm just going to add shading from the top and the bottom. And then around, like especially the bottom edges where the bottle is more curved, I'm going to add more shadows to there. And then I'm going to add one little line of dark color at the back of my swoop. And then I'm going to blend that in with my lighter colors. So I did eventually go back and actually darken this up a little bit more since it's behind that front portion. And then I extended out that line, but you can see I'm keeping that highlight line from the front portion of the potion. I'm keeping that highlight line there so that there's a differentiation between the front and the back. Now, because this is something that I don't typically do, it's kind of new to me. I really liked it, so I probably do it more. But because it is new to me, you're going to see here that I just kind of go back and forth with how dark I want it to be before I am happy with it. And sometimes that's just what you have to do. There has to be kind of a practice. Now, obviously, these I am making specifically for this card, but I would highly encourage you to just stamp out some images and play with them so that you're happy with the way that they look before you're like, I'm on a deadline, I got to get this card or video or whatever published. So I just played around with it a little bit, and you can see now like there's a very distinct rise and fall of what is in the front and what is in the background. And I was ultimately happy with the way that that turned out. For the fourth, it's not the third anymore, y'all, it's the fourth. I wanted to do some bubbles. And like I thought about it afterward. I was like, well, I guess if there was any pressure in there, we would just be popping the cork right out of this potion bottle. But I just thought it was a fun kind of way to add some different texture into it so that it wasn't just all flat. So I'm going in with my lightest color, and you can see I'm drawing some circles at the top, and this is just to give me my kind of like my horizon line. And then I'm going to go in with my next darkest color, lightest to darkest, darkest to lightest. Y'all know how we roll. And I'm going to add in just some little C shapes around the bubbles. And then I'm going to draw some circles. They're not perfect. They're misshapen within the actual jar. You want to leave those open and with the lightest color so that we have some highlight that will differentiate the bubbles. So ultimately, the whole thing ends up getting colored in except for the bubbles with your mid-tone. And then again, I'm going to go in with some little, just some little C shapes right over those bubbles. Each time I'm going to my next darkest color, I'm going right over the same C shapes that I've already put in there. I'm not adding any new ones. I'm just darkening up what's already there so that it gives it some dimension. And then obviously each time the bottom of the bottle is getting a little bit darker every time. With this one, I didn't necessarily keep the darkness to the left or the right. I just did it straight across the bottom. But you do want to watch with your flicking that it's not all, like that wall of color where they're all the same size and length. You want to vary your stroke so it's different. And then as I got out to my darkest color, I'm working back into my lightest, going right back over those C shapes very lightly with only the tip of the marker, because we do want to reserve that highlight so that we will be able to see those bubbles. And then just filling that bottom portion in with my mid-tone to make sure everything is blending and I'm happy with it. And then I'll go back in and hit just the bubbles with my lightest color. There, I forgot to go back over my shading. That was my fault. I thought I was done with it, but I wasn't. So now we'll go back in with the lightest color. And then this is, you can see, like, it's got some texture, some bubbles that are going on in there. You could make them lighter and blend in less, but I was happy with the way that those turned out. So for the last one, I'm just going to show you the color combination. Did I show you the whole thing? Maybe I did. It's the same thing that, because Eric tells me I'm a perfectionist, but I don't think that that's true. I think I just like to learn things. And so because the first time I tried it, it gave me such a hard time. And then the second time I was able to successfully do it, I wanted to do it a third time, because as I tell you guys all the time, you're never going to learn if you don't practice. Practice doesn't make perfect. Practice teaches you lessons. And so this time around, I did it the opposite, which was my original intention with the purple one. That the background would be, like the background portion of it would be on the left-hand side, and the lightest portion of it would be on the right-hand side. And I just chose some yellows and oranges to accomplish this particular look. It did get easier each time that I did it. But, you know, I think that's true with anything. The more you do something, the more comfortable you get with it. And I'm sure, like I said, Alberto, he's amazing at it. So I'm sure that he's done it 100 million times and is super comfortable with it. But I would so encourage you to check out his coloring. This is like just like one big fangirl video about all these colorists that I think are absolutely amazing. So anywho, we're going to finish that up, and then I colored the corks with the E55, 57, and 59. I don't think I showed that. And then here's where we're going to go back in with the blue. This is not necessary. I just like the look of blue better. My whole background was kind of a little dark and drab with the cinder block dungeon kind of look, and so adding the blue just gives them a little bit of brightness. I just used a B01 and then a B00. I went right over those grays, so my shading's still intact. I'm really just tinting it, is really what this is doing, and I'm being very careful not to touch the color that I already put down. Like I said earlier, you know, if you know this is what you're going to do, you would already have this part done, so you wouldn't be risking dragging any of the color like I am. But yeah, so that's that. Now, let's do the highlight. This is where the magic really comes in. This white gel pen. You guys already know that I love a white gel pen. I think it's magical. But the white highlight is really what's kind of going to make these bottles pop. They already look very pretty. They're already brightly colored. I'm here for that. But just going in and doing some lines of white gel pen is really going to kind of bump up the reflective portion. That line that I just put in there on the purple one across the diagonal, I don't like it, and I'm going to fix it later. Because there's a way to fix that too. There's a way to fix everything. So here, anyway, I'm going in and just adding those highlights. Once I'm happy with that, I am going to go in and remember the other day when we colored that magical sparkle dress, like that was super fun. And so I am going to go in and add in a couple of those sparkles and dots, just for kind of like a fun, playful effect. Like I said, I know that Halloween isn't necessarily everybody's, jam. Like my sister loves Halloween, dresses up for Halloween, decorates her whole house for Halloween. I decorate my kids for Halloween. That's it. That's all I got. I take my kids trick-or-treating. I dress up with them because I think that's a fun way for us to make memories. But outside of that, I don't do anything for Halloween. I'm not decorating for it or anything. But I do think that these jars are fun. I think that those type of stamps are fun to color. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I want my art to be something that I enjoy and that is fun for me. And so, yeah, you guys know that the old saying that I say all the time, you do what works for you on your card and I will do what works for me. And they may or may not be the same thing sometimes, all the times, or never. And that's totally okay. So here, just adding in those little sparkles and dots. And I just added those right over the coloring, the black outlines. Like that is the point with the white highlight, that you're kind of cutting through some of what is already there. I did show you earlier that I stamped down the Halloween potion labels, and I did not end up using them. Not in that way. So originally my intention, because I thought that they were so cute, was to stamp them, die cut them, and then put them on my little potion jars here. And you could even use these for like perfume with some flowers, or some other, type containers. I just think they're a lot of fun. So anyway, here's where I'm going to go back in and fix that line that I don't like. I just covered it right up with a VO4. I've never had any issues coloring over it. But so anyway, I wanted to show you how I colored the labels. I wanted them to be white, so I just added some C3 and some C1 along the sides, and that's really all I did to them. The other thing that I wanted to show you with these particular stamps is that the die cuts for these come with a shadow, which is like your traditional white outline, but then they have like an inset one, which cuts right on the black line. Like, I could not even believe how close it got, and it was fantastic. It was so good. So anyway, that was my original intention in using them. But what I found was it covered up far too much of the bottle. I didn't like them once I cut them out. So I'm using the coordinating dies to cut out my bottles as well. And then once I got them all die cut out and kind of laid down together, that's when I discovered that it just really covered up too much of the bottle, and I had done so much work on the bottle, I didn't want to cover them up. Does that make sense? So here is what they look like with the labels on them. It is very cute, and I could see using this maybe in another card, but because I did all the work to these particular bottles, I'm not doing it. So what I decided to do instead was just stamp them directly onto the bottle. That way you'd still be able to see the color behind them, but they would still have a label, and I just stamped them in black. I'm going to be honest, I thought about stamping them in white, but the idea of heat embossing every single one of these was too much for me. It was just too much. So I just stamped them in black to give them a little bit of, that Halloween feel, that little, dungeon vibe, and then I called it good. So once I had stamped, I won't show you all of them, but once I had stamped a couple of them, then I'm just going to move along in the card making process. You guys know how this goes. I chose the name of the stamp set is Hocus Pocus, and that is the stamp that I chose for my sentiment. I'm going to treat this with my anti-static tool and then stamp this in my clear embossing ink, and then heat set it with a white detail embossing powder. I'm not sure what went wrong here. I was able to fix it, thank goodness, but I'm not sure why it happened in the first place. Maybe because I pushed it back down, maybe because I pushed the cardstock back down, but you're going to see when I dump it on here, there's like this whole line on the right hand side that my embossing powder sticks to that I have no idea why. I don't know what happened there. I don't know if there was like a sticky something from a previously die cut something, because this is just a scrap. I'm not sure. But I went in with a dry paintbrush and cleaned it up. That worked beautifully. I heat set this, and then I used its coordinating die as well. Here's my background that I am genuinely happy with. The part like on the bottom that's not colored in is because I knew my bottles would cover it up. But I wanted to use this large spider web, like all these little like sparkly potions that are all brightly colored or sitting on this little, shelf. And the contrast to that is these darker, cracked, like bricks or cinder block in the background with like spider webs on it. And so the contrast is intentional. I went back and forth about whether or not to do the spider web in clear or in white. I was worried that the white would be a little bit too distracting from the rest of the background, and it might be. I'm going to be honest. I'm not sure how I feel about it. At the end of the day, I was happy with the card, so it must be okay. But if I think I have to do it over again, I might have tried either a clear or maybe that satin pearl that we tried yesterday. Maybe that would have been less kind of in your face about it. Did you see me just dump my embossing powder there? That's the second time I have done that to this particular bottle of embossing powder, and it is infuriating every time it happens. Just saying. I cleaned it up with a big 1-inch flat brush, just in case that ever happens to you. I smush it all back onto the paper, and then I dump it back into the container. But there is some loss there. It's a bummer. So I'm going to heat set this until it is melted and shiny and beautiful. Like I said, I know that it's large. I do think that it kind of distracts from the original background, but it's okay. I know I spent a lot of time on it, but ultimately at the end of the day, I think it adds to kind of like the vibe of this scene card, so I'm cool with that. I am going to glue down some of these bottles flat, and I'm going to pop up some of these bottles on foam tape. I tried to put them on in a way that I was cutting off minimal amounts of the bottle so that like just a little bit was hanging over. There I had some leftover sticker from my washi tape when I was doing my die cutting. I have a new bottle of glue. I just don't like being wasteful, and I want to use every last drop in this glue. Fortunately, they have a glue holder, which would probably be helpful to me if I used it, that will hold your glue bottle upside down, so it's kind of always ready to go. But like I just said, I don't really use it, so that's my fault. So here, I was just switching out the colors to see what I liked best. I'm going to pop up this one in the front on foam. If you don't like the Halloween, kind of vibe that these perfect potions have going on, no worries. There's labels that are in the set, that are included in that set, that don't have anything to do with Halloween. Like you could just put whatever you wanted in there. And those ones are actually shaped to fit the bottles, so that's nice as well. So I got those adhered down. I'm going to pop up my sentiment on foam as well and kind of put that in the center of my spider web. And then I'm going to trim off the minimal excess that I have. You guys know how I feel about the white outline on die cuts, and so I did go in. This part is helpful with doing a fully Copic colored background, because then you know exactly what color you need to use to make them blend in, because you're the one who colored it. There's no trial and error there. So I did go around. I'm not going to show you the whole thing because it is, so much of a longer video. But I did go around and color those things so that white edge was hidden. And then super happy with the way that it's coming out. I am going to add some glitters and some shimmers. I used clear on all of my little bottles just because that made the most sense to me. And then that's it. That's the whole card. So I hope you learned a little bit of something about how to color these bottles. I hope that you learned a little bit of something about how to give yourself grace, and I will work on it as well. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope that you will head over and check out the entire release from Honeybee. There's much more than just Halloween, and it's all fantastic. And I'll catch you guys on the next video. Bye.